Welcome, everyone, to our postponed meeting. Last Monday was supposed to be the meeting, but the weather and staff illnesses made it contingent on us to move it to tonight. So I'll call the meeting to order. This meeting's being live streamed and recorded and will be available on the Township YouTube page. And notice is hereby given that under the authority of Municipal Act, in accordance with Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, all information attained is considered part of the public record. I've been asked to amend the agenda slightly, if Council will consider that, by moving item 8.5, I believe. Let me just check. Yes, the emergency plan bylaw to 8.1, just so we can get that out of the way so James can get out of here. With that amendment, I'll ask for an approval of the agenda. Councillor Milligan, Deputy Reeve Davison, all in favor? That's carried, thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest and the nature thereof? None declared. We have no open forum registrants this evening. Presentations. Our incredibly athletic firefighter Leanne McCauley has done it again, and our MPP Rick Brzee has asked Councillor Fenwick to make a presentation to Leanne. So Rob, the floor is yours.
Through you, John. Folks, I apologize I can't stand up. My microphone's not that portable, but Leanne, on behalf of MPP Rick Brzee and the Province of Ontario, I am honored to present to you with the certificate in recognition of your incredible accomplishments. I will read what is written here on the certificate for the benefit of everyone watching here, online and in the room. Congratulations on behalf of the Government of Ontario. I am pleased to extend my sincerest congratulations on your new world records. Incredible success at the Firefighter Challenge Championship. Your hard work, dedication, and determination have truly paid off, setting a new standard for excellence. Signed, Rick Brzee, MPP, Hastings, Lennox and Addington.
Thanks, Rob, and congratulations from the Township as well, Leanne. We already gave you a certificate last time, so I'm sure it won't be the last. Thank you very much. Okay, item 6.3 under presentation. By the way, if you're just here to see Leanne, you don't have to hang out. Merry Christmas. So, I guess the firefighters didn't want to hear the audit, Laurie. The next item is the KPMG 2023 financial audit presented by Laurie Huber. The recommendation is that the presentation and audited financial statements be adopted as presented. Can I get a motion just to put that on the floor, please? Councillor Land, Councillor Milligan. Just press that button, Laurie, when you're ready. The floor is yours.
Wonderful. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for that warm welcome. Pleased to be here tonight in person to walk you through the highlights of our fiscal 2023 financial statement audit. We had pre-circulated a couple of items as part of tonight's presentation. I'll walk you through the one that's on the screen. It is a lengthy document. Hopefully you've had a time to take a look through in terms of the highlights of our findings, but I'll certainly stop on what I think are most relevant as part of the presentation here tonight. And as always, certainly we'll welcome any questions from the group if you have any. So jumping into page 5 of our report, we'll start on status where we are today. Essentially, we are complete, subject to Council's ultimate approval of the financial statements. Our audit window does stay open until Council does accept and approve our financial statements. All of the other items that you'll see there on that page are certainly ordinary, normal course at this stage of the audit, as we are essentially complete. Moving into the numbers themselves, as you'll see on the next page, what we've tried to do in our report is try to weave through some of the more key items in the financial statements themselves into our audit findings report. So the first piece that you'll see on page number 6 is the statement of financial position, otherwise known as the balance sheet at the close of business on December 31. What I'll do is share with you some of the key items, certainly that are uniquely different in fiscal 2023 relative to 2022, but you also see on the right-hand side of the page, I've given you some variance analysis of some of the more significant shifts year over year that hopefully you found helpful. So at the top of the house, you'll see within your financial asset category, you'll see cash sitting there in the bank, just over 12.5 million, which is an increase over the previous year, which is always a good thing. Other items that you'll see as we work our way down the page, within financial liabilities, you will see there is a significant new item included in there, which you would have seen articulated in our report a little bit later on. And I would have warned you about in the previous fiscal year, and that's the asset retirement obligation. It is a relatively new number in some respects, and I'm choosing my words carefully as I try to explain this one. But asset retirement obligation was a new accounting standard that came in 2023. And it did include the former scope of what you had on your books for the landfill closure and post-closure liability. And the calculation of that determination has changed in year. And you will see it sitting at 11.7 million. Last year, 11.5. However, you will see at the top of the page through the financial statements that the adoption of that standard was actually retroactively applied. And what you will see on subsequent pages is the lift to that liability in year was about $7 million compared to what you had in the previous year. It's a large number for such a small municipality, but I can certainly explain why. So in the previous standard, as you recorded that liability for the landfill, you got to record the liability based on your usage. So if you were only at 10% capacity of total capacity, you only really had to record 10% of the liability. That proration is now gone under the new formula, so you actually have to record 100% of the amount. So that's why it is dramatically different year over year. So the items have been restated in the previous year to make it appear as though they are presented on a comparative basis. In asset retirement obligations, other items were in scope as well that you would have seen in our report. So things like an inventory of assets that might include items such as asbestos, where those would be required to be remediated at some point in the future. The team underwent an exercise through the course of the year to identify any of those items in scope, and those are included in that number as well. That portion you will see in the notes to the financial statements is only about $250,000, so really tiny in the grand scheme of things. It's really the landfill piece that is significantly different year over year. That being said, one of the KPIs in terms of the financial health of the organization, when you look at your net financial assets, that's your total financial assets minus your financial liabilities. Those have actually increased by about $1 million, sitting at just over 1.9 million at the end of the year. Below the line is where you'll see your significant investments over the course of time in your non-financial pieces, which are your tangible capital assets. We'll see those on a slide a little bit later on, but you can see there were in-year additions in the year greater than the annual charge for amortization, which is why you're seeing the net book value at 41.2 million at the end of the year. Once you take your net financial assets and add your non-financial assets, that's what's left in terms of accumulated surplus. Those are where things like reserve and reserve funds that we'll see in a minute are included as well. So the next couple of slides give you some financial pictures. Sometimes it's easier to look at pictures versus numbers. Just for interest's sake, really looking at the combination of all of your tangible capital assets that are sitting on your balance sheet, you can see over 60% of your assets are in road infrastructure and wastewater. The next couple of slides are the reserve and reserve funds. It's always interesting to sort of look at yourself over the course of time. I've given you a 5-year trend in terms of reserve and reserve funds as they sit in your financial statements. You can see they have been pretty consistent, I would say, over the course of the last 3 years for sure, and certainly continuing to climb a little bit year over year. If we move on to page number 9, one of the KPIs that the province looks at when they analyze municipal financial statements is the reserve and reserve funds as a percentage of your operating expenses. You can see at the bottom page there, they would suggest that it would be green or good, anything in excess of 20%. You can certainly see this municipality has been well north of that standard over the course of the last 5 years. So you're sitting at over 100% again for 2023. Which again, I would always answer the question that you might be thinking, what is that right number? What should those numbers be? It's really tough to give you a firm answer because it's really contingent on some of the future plans and more the long-term financial planning that the municipality is thinking about in the future. You do tend to see less variability, ideally, as you work your way through the subsequent fiscal years. The next slide is page number 10 of our report, which is your statement of operations. It's probably something that might be more meaningful to you because it does include the budgeted amounts as well, reported under what we call a PSAB basis. So this highlights your in-year revenues and your in-year expenses. If we jump right to the bottom line in terms of the annual surplus reported for the year, you can see you budgeted a surplus of about $900,000. The actual surplus in year is about $1.5 million. Again, on the right-hand side, some of the significant variances I've provided to you are there on the right-hand side, but certainly at the top of the house in terms of property taxation. Pretty close to budget. However, there were some supplementaries that were issued at the end, towards the end of the year, and we'll see that in taxes receivable as well, which is why you'll see that increased over budget. Investment income across the board, I would say, in fiscal 2023 was quite rich. The market rates were quite high and favorable, which is why you're seeing a significant increase year over year and certainly relative to budget. The other item that's significant in your revenues are your contributions from developers. So once the municipality assumes certain assets within the municipality, those get recorded on the books through that line. So that's why you will see variability year over year that can be significant because those items tend to be large. And there was very few of those in fiscal 2023. If we work our way through the next slide, in terms of operating expenses, on the face of your financial statements, you're required to report those items by department. This slide gives you a nice picture of how the expenses are broken down by object or by type. And I would say, certainly at a high level, I would say nothing characteristically different at your municipality compared to some of your peer organizations as well. Moving into some of the more audit type things outside of the numbers, just a reminder to the group, a KPMG audit methodology continues to be very much a risk-based audit approach, meaning we stand back, looking at the financial statements as a whole and trying to identify where we believe there's a greater risk of material misstatement occurring. Two items likely jump out at you on the page here, on page number 12. One is the first one, which is management override of controls. That is not a sign of your internal controls at all. That's a presumed risk assessment in all financial statement audits, irrespective of sector. So you will see behind here the work that we're required to do to mitigate that risk, and certainly no significant findings to bring to your attention in that regard. The other item that is other than what we would call a low-risk item is the fact that this is the first year of the asset retirement obligation standard. So in the first year, certainly given the size and magnitude of that item, that was assessed at something other than low again for fiscal 2023. As we work our way through the balance of the report, there's lots of information in there to the extent there's interest related to asset retirement obligations, but certainly have worked quite detailed with management to make sure that the process they undertook was sufficient and appropriate, and certainly no significant findings to bring to your attention in that regard. You will see in the notes to the financial statements, 2023 was a busy year. There was not only one new accounting standard, there was a second one related to financial instruments, so that's articulated nicely in the financial statements as well, with some new risk disclosures that are required to be in there moving forward. So that will be something that will carry on into the future as well. In terms of the numbers themselves, you will see that we had completed our audit for fiscal 2023 with an overall financial reporting materiality of $300,000, which is really a function of your benchmarks being total revenues or total expenses consistent with the previous year. And likely most important to this group is the threshold that we certainly sat down and had conversations with the team around was $15,000, which is 5% of that materiality number. And that takes us to page number 18, which is what I'm required to share with you through the results of our audit. We did identify some items that have not been recorded in the financial statements. I will be honest, it's really a function of time, and we wanted to make sure that we rounded out our audit to be able to present here tonight. And the culmination of those items is $72,000, which would be an additional impact to your annual surplus that is reported. Those combination of items, certainly relative to materiality, did not impact our audit report, and they will be fleshed out as part of fiscal 2024's financial reporting. The next slide on page number 19 is just a good reminder in terms of our obligations to speak to yourselves, being council or those charged with governance. We are required to share with you to the extent we do identify significant deficiencies in internal controls. As part of any audit, it's not just the numbers. We do look at the systems, processes, and controls that culminate into the financial reporting process. So we've done that again this year and certainly have not identified any significant deficiencies in internal controls to bring to your attention. Page number 21, if we jump ahead a few slides, is a new slide for us this year. It's always a good reminder. We're great at telling you the things that we're required to share with you, but it's always a nice refresher to share with you the things that we actually are required to highlight to you as part of our professional standards to the extent any of these items exist. These are mandatory requirements in terms of those charged with governance. So pleased to say, as you can see on the right-hand side of that table, none of those matters existed this year and none formed part of our reporting. As a reminder, we are required to be independent as your external auditor. We're that independent third set of eyes, really, over the financial reporting process. We've not provided any non-audit services to the corporation through the course of the year, so there's nothing there that might be thought to encroach on our independence. And I promise I'm almost done, taking me to Appendix 1A, which is our draft auditor's report. This is included at the front of the financial statements as well, and this is really our single deliverable in terms of our contribution to the annual audit. It is a clean audit report, again, for fiscal 2023, based on the findings presented here tonight. You will see, if you were to compare this audit report to the previous year's audit report, there are 2 new additions in there again, and I do sound like a bit of a broken record. It's related to the dramatic impact, I would say, in terms of the implementation of that new asset retirement obligation standard. So there's an emphasis of matter paragraph and an other matter paragraph, the fact that the previous year's items have been restated on this new basis. So the previous years this year look different than the final issued last year. So that's the bridge to provide to a user of the financial statements. And those retroactive adjustments were included as part of our current year audit. So assuming the financial statements are approved here tonight, today would then form the date of our auditor's report. The balance of the deck is really more informational items, and perhaps I will pause here and welcome any questions from the group if there are any.
Thanks, Lori. Any questions at this point from council? Yes, Councillor Lamb, go ahead.
So thank you very much, because I read through this document and went, what? So this is really helpful having you verbalize page by page, or, you know, the highlights. And I'm very happy that I have a better understanding with you coming here today and providing us with that. I do have a couple of questions, and I think you can clear them up probably. So 12.5 million cash in the bank. It's really not making a lot of interest. And is there not a better way that we can manage $12.5 million to get a better interest rate on that? And do you have any suggestions for what we should do other than letting it sit in a bank?
So that is likely a great question for management. I can certainly say that it's always an interesting question, and no one has a crystal ball. I dare say the market rates were quite favorable in bank interest over the course of 2023, recognizing it's December 2024, and that landscape has changed, but perhaps the treasurer might want to provide some input on that one.
Thank you. Through you, Rice. Yes, we are looking at that. We wanted to get a better handle on what's actually in our reserves and what's coming and going and due to from based on maybe some outstanding work in progress that we would be having over the tangible capital assets, and hopefully in the year of 2025, because 2024 is just a bit over, we should be able to finish up that analysis and be able to provide a better outcome for our money.
Brings me to my second question. So the reserve and the reserve funds, I assume ours are up beyond 100% because of the landfill issue and what we're needing to have in reserve to when the time comes to close, you know, a landfill, which I understand is part of our discussion at budget time as well. But is over 100% compared to the benchmark of 20%. So taking that 1.1 that 12.5 million cash in bank and rolling in a reserve fund, would that not just push us even higher over the plus 100% compared to benchmark of 20? And am I right in assuming that's why our reserve funds are so high?
So through you, if we look at note 3 of the financial statements on page number 10, page number 10 will show you the details of the reserve and reserve funds year over year. Specifically, you mentioned landfill. There was an increase to the landfill reserve fund in year by about $300,000. So money is being put away into the reserve and reserve fund. I would say in terms of the cash is not going to impact your reserve and reserve funds. It's going to be the return that you're using on the asset because the monies are already set aside. It's sort of the debit to match the credit, if that makes sense. Okay.
Thank you. I think that's all I had to ask.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions at this point? Okay, can carry on, Lori.
Actually, that concludes
it?
my presentation.
Okay, then I
Yes.
do have questions. Looking at the actual statements, not the presentation one, on page 4, and these are just sort of specific things I didn't understand. So this would be a statement of cash flows. Under taxes receivable, in 2022, there was about 32,000, and in 2023, there was about 225,000, and that's bracketed. What does that actually mean? Is that something that's owing in taxes, or we're getting more taxes than we expected? Or I just didn't understand that.
So that's a great question. So the negatives on page number 4 are meant to demonstrate cash outflows. So the cash outflows for taxes receivable, if you flip to page number 1, you will see your taxes receivable caption has increased year over year. So what that means is you have more outstanding at the end of the year, which means you have less in the bank. So that change in year to drive up your receivables drives down your cash. So you want to collect those receivables that have increased, and I did ask the question actually a few weeks ago, just on conclusion, to make sure the variances were correct. That was my comment earlier in the presentation. There was a lot of supplementaries that were issued just prior to the end of 2023 to drive that number up that have been collected in 2024. So it's really a timing issue. It's not indicative of a pervasive issue in terms of collecting normal taxes receivable.
Right. Yeah, you've got to understand this to be able to cross-reference a
You
lot of these
do.
ins and outs, don't you?
You do.
Yeah, it's cross-referencing is getting me cross-eyed sometimes, I'll tell you. And just for those listening whose ears may have perked up, there's a couple of mentions of contributions from developers. Would this be things like parkland reserve contributions, or what? What does that figure represent from developers then?
So traditionally, those contributions from developers would be a great example where the numbers tend to be large is when you assume a subdivision. That would be a great example. Or you're assuming a road or anything of that nature that goes into your tangible capital assets. It's the assumption of assets that then become part of the municipal portfolio.
Okay, that clears that up. Thank you. And my final sort of question is not specific to the audit, and it's just a matter of timing. Obviously, we can't do an in-year audit. We don't know where we're at specifically in 2024, but it's almost 2025, and we're just getting our 2023 audit. And this isn't an accusation. It's just a question, because it was the same at the county. What was the cause of the delay in getting our audits done this time around?
Sure, that's a great question. So I would say a combination of factors. I think the new treasurer that is here has done a significant amount of effort to get the audit ready, to get the audit preparation complete. I would say that was one piece. There was some accounting assistance that was provided here in the summer to remedy some of those items and to get things in the GL and to be balanced. I would say number two, the new accounting standards this year were a significant lift, and there was external assistance that was required to complete those items. So that was certainly a timing issue. And we started field work here at the end of September. That's when we really came in to complete the audit, even though it was 9 months later. That was when we had worked with the team to be ready to come here to start. And I would say, normally speaking, an audit generally takes 2 months from start to finish. So we had a late start, and fortunately, we're here today. I still have probably 10 that aren't going to be done in 2024 and going into 2025. It's been an interesting year across municipal governments this year.
Thank you. So having said that, everybody's sort of readjusting to these new accounting standards. Do you expect we'll be on a more normal schedule for audits for the 2024 audit next year?
I would say the lift for 2024 is significantly less in terms of what is new and different. There are a couple of new standards, however, nothing as significant and pervasive as what we saw in 2023. So assuming the team is ready for us to go much earlier, we would be in a position to be able to execute that.
I hope that's the case. Thank you. So
We do too, actually.
yeah, you've probably spent a lot of late nights. So if council has nothing further, Rob, did you?
Thanks, John. Yeah, to John's point, and you bring up a good one, I just want to make sure that I'm clear on this. Contributions from developers, you mentioned. I'm just going to use an actual example and see if I'm accurate here. So if, for example, a person were to take a piece of road and bring it up to county spec, or township spec, either or, so they could create road frontage for a severance, and then deed it over to the township for maintenance. That is what we're seeing there. Okay, I just wanted to make sure in layman's terms that's what I believe that's true. Good. The other thing too is individually significant uncorrected audit misstatements. Wow, I said that without joking on it. Another one there, you said that's going to quote unquote flush out. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? I'm just kind of confused on that part.
Sure, through you. Those are the combination of accruals that weren't recorded in the books at the end of 2023 for a variety of matters. So essentially, your expenses are understated and your payables are understated at the end of the year. So those will be paid and expensed in 2024, even though they actually related to 2023.
Okay, anything further? We have a motion to receive, and I guess we've already got a mover and seconder. All in favor? That's carried. Thanks very much, Lori.
Thank you. Good to see you all.
next year.
Thank you.
Earlier next year then.
You bet. I promise.
Thank you.
I joke. The bar's low this year.
Okay, under this section, deputations, is Lawrence with us? There he is. Lawrence O'Keefe has a deputation on behalf of Friends of the Napanee River regarding flowering rush concerns and invasive species. Can I just get a motion to receive Lawrence's report ahead of time? Deputy Reeve Davison, Councillor Milligan. Go ahead, Lawrence. The floor is yours.
It's been a while since I sat at this table. Gosh.
It has been.
So good evening, Your Worship, Deputy Reeve Davidson, councilors, and staff. Thank you for allowing Friends of the Napanee River to speak this evening. As most of you know, I am Lawrence O'Keefe and past chair of Friends of the Napanee River. I am also a director with the Lennox and Addington Stewardship Council. Our presentation this evening is regarding the explosive growth of flowering rush on the Napanee River, which is one of the most aggressive aquatic invasive species and which is increasingly becoming a significant environmental threat across Canada. It is near the top of the list of invasive species with the Minister of the Environment, the Ministry of Natural Resources, and the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. Next slide, please. Sorry, who's controlling slides so I know? Is that? Okay. Fire Chief, okay, good. You just go back one, if you could. Thanks, yeah. Unlike most other land or aquatic invasive species, flowering rush's rhizome, which is highlighted lower left on this slide, is at the core of why this plant is so invasive. When damaged in any way through efforts to remove it, its growth expands exponentially from its roots. This is unlike any other invasive species, especially aquatic. Next slide. The area along the Napanee River that has experienced this explosive growth is a 1.8 kilometer stretch between Yarker and Camden East. In conversation with Dr. Janice Gilbert from the Invasive Species Control Center in southwestern Ontario, she told me last week that she considers this as a major infestation and very much worth a battle to take on. Next slide. More specifically, it is in the area between the eddy below Yarker Falls adjacent to the old Quinn's Meats property and downstream to within a few hundred yards upstream from Curl Road. Next slide. Interestingly enough, we believe this is a very constrained area for a number of reasons which I'll explain. And this is backed up by DNA water testing conducted by Quinte Conservation in 2023. As you can see, there are a number of areas to our west where the DNA has been found at various outflows. So far, we have yet to see any DNA indicators at the mouth of the Napanee River in downtown Napanee, which may indicate the plant has not yet taken a hold on the entire Napanee River watershed. Next slide. This is a bit of a busy slide, but I'm sure, councillors, you can see it on your own set there. We have mapped the density of the growth in this particular area, and as you can see, it ranges between 3 to 5 feet on both shorelines to what we call red patches, where it is virtually impassable to kayaks and canoes. It is worth noting that the area is constrained by the eddy in the northeast end down to a 500-yard stretch of very shallow fractured limestone substrata, which is that little gray oblong circle there, where the plant is not gaining any footing on the shoreline or indeed across the river. Next slide. This photo shows that there were absolutely no signs of the plant in 2018. However, next slide. By 2024, the plant had taken hold for 3 to 5 feet on both shorelines and has completely blocked the river in a 400 to 500-yard stretch, more or less in the middle of that 1.8 section. Next slide. This was borne out using a drone last summer, where the flowering rush is seen to have taken hold in the shallow water of about 4 feet in depth, completely spanning the river. Just for your information, flowering rush thrives in under 4 feet of water, and that's why it's taken over the shoreline along this particular stretch. Next slide. Without going into all the scientific studies on this invasive species, of which we have a fair number, it has some very dramatic effects on our lakes, and in particular, narrow waterways like the Napanee River. Most notably, it totally replaces native aquatic plants. Let me say that again. It totally replaces native aquatic plants in less than 3 years. It has a significant impact on fish habitat and breeding. It can result in overland flooding. And it robs water nutrients and dissolved oxygen, which are essential for native plants and aquatic species like turtles and fish, which abound, as you know, in the Napanee River. Next slide. Basically, there are a number of best management practices suggested by the Invasive Species Council of Ontario. However, having tried several, not including trying to pull it out, we have landed on the proposed use of an eco-friendly herbicide, which is federally and provincially regulated and which requires permits to use. And before you go crazy on the word herbicide, just listen for the next little bit, because it'll hopefully kind of calm your fears a bit. Next slide. The most widely used and accepted herbicide across Ontario and Canada is called Habitat Aqua. In a nutshell, this is a herbicide which is specifically designed for eradicating Phragmites and flowering rush. The key attributes of Habitat Aqua is it has an extremely short half-life, and it only targets a very specific protein found in flowering rush. When sprayed on the plant, the overspray is either destroyed by sunlight or is neutralized by microbial metabolism in shoreline soil. Both the Ministry of Natural Resources and the Ministry of the Environment consider Habitat Aqua to be a benign herbicide because of its highly targeted molecular, you know what I mean, structure. I know, Your Worship, you got it. The other benefits which I'm prepared to discuss later are also listed in this slide. Next slide. I have had meetings with other jurisdictions who have had a lot of experience with this particular herbicide. However, the four best examples are the large projects by Alberta Conservation on Lake Isle, as well as a large number of projects, over 30 in fact, on the Bruce Peninsula and land and shores on Lake Huron, as well as a smaller project on Milburn Creek, just next door in Battersea. Next slide. I know it's a little hard for the audience to see this, but council, hopefully you can see these slides quite well. These two example sites were sent to me a few weeks ago by Alberta Conservation on Lake Isle, covering their work over the last few years. The biologists tell me up in the left-hand corner in 2018, they could almost walk over the dense mat of flowering rush. And after only 1 or 2 applications of Habitat Aqua, the shorelines were totally renaturalized within 2 years. Next slide. As a brief summary, this is what we've accomplished to date. We've been working closely with the Ministry of the Environment, the Ministry of Natural Resources, the Fish and Fish Habitat Protection Program in the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, Quinte Conservation, who is our sponsor for this project, and Nature Conservancy Canada in working up a project for the Napanee River. The Invasive Species Action Fund, based out of Sault Ste. Marie, and is funded by both the federal government and the Ministry of Natural, MNRF, have been particularly helpful in advising us on how to move forward and how we can secure significant funding from them for the project. Here are some of the key points on funding with an estimated project cost of $10,000, most of which would be provided by the Invasive Species Action Fund. I should point out that if we are unable to find a contractor in our region, I'll be honest, the project cost could likely blossom, although I am having discussions with several companies who are very experienced with this type of work. Next slide. This is a list of our project partners and funds secured to date, with a view of adding, hopefully, Stone Mills as a partner in our project. Next slide. Here are the key activities for 2025 as stage 1 of the project. I'll be very honest with you, I was hoping that we could spray this coming fall, but given the amount of work, I should say, involved with the Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Natural Resources, and DFO. It's going to take a lot of work to work with them. So I'll explain what we're doing as a change or a pivot in our project. With respect to preparing the budget for the project, next slide, I'll be applying the province's class estimating system, which I have a fair bit of experience with it from the federal level, with finalizing the detailed budget for the implementation phase by no later than this time next year. Next slide. As part of our communications plan, we will hold several landowner and public information events this coming winter, followed by partners workshop next summer to prepare key responsibilities for stage 2 of the project in 2026. Quinte Conservation in our last 2 meetings has asked us to consider conducting an assessment including DNA water sampling across the entire length of the Napanee watershed. So we'll be considering that as one of our public participation events next summer. Finally, next fall, we will report our progress to you and ask for your financial support for 2026 before submitting our application before mid-January 2026 for major project funding support from the Invasive Species Action Fund. This phase of work will also involve submitting the applications for permits to the Minister of the Environment and DFO Fish and Fish Habitat Protection Program, both of which we have already had with whom we've had extensive discussions. Next slide. The last stage in the project slows a bit until funding is approved by the Invasive Species Action Fund in March 2026, after which we will sign the necessary contract with the herbicide application company, hold final public information events, and launch the spraying program in September 2026. The timing of the spraying program is very particular for flowering rush, and September is the most common spraying window. All of the final reports will be submitted in late fall 2026, after which we will give you a wrap-up presentation in December, so in other words, 2 years from now. Next slide. So here's the bottom line and what we're asking for this evening. In order to do all the preparation work, public information events and activities, including an assessment of the entire watershed in 2025, as requested by Quinte Conservation, we're asking you for $500 as part of your 2025 budget deliberations. We would also like to propose a motion for you to earmark $2,000 in your 2026 budget for the implementation phase. And finally, this is our commitment to you. We will provide presentations to council and staff both next fall as well as the final report in the fall of 2026. As a final note, we would certainly welcome staff or council representation on our partners planning team if council is interested in having the township take a more active role. Thank you for your time this evening, and I'd be happy to entertain any questions or comments you might have.
Thanks, Lawrence. Questions or comments? Lawrence. Yes, Councillor Fenwick.
You mentioned a request by the Conservation Authority for a DNA analysis on the entire river. I'm just curious, is that just simply so that they would, or you would have like a baseline for the entire river, so after application you could do another test to see if it's, I'm not sure why that would be necessary. Can you elaborate?
Through you, Your Worship. The DNA testing is highly indicative of kind of an early, I'll say an early attack, if you want to call it that. The DNA testing shows up potentially a year ahead of the plant showing up. So this has been Quinte Conservation's experience. So what they had asked us is, would we consider doing that analysis of the whole watershed, even though it appears that we've only got 1.8 kilometers infected, if you will, at this point. Now, keep in mind, it's our plan, regardless of whether we do a DNA assessment or not, because there are some complications with that, but to do a visual, I'll say, a visual audit, thank you, visual audit of the river, which can be done by, kayaks and canoes and casual people just mapping out where they see it. One of the problems with the DNA analysis, there are only 2 labs in Ontario that do the type of testing that we're looking at. So Quinte Conservation is currently using MNRF, Trent University Lab, and they're heavily overcommitted. But I'm also dealing with Professor Lougheed, Dr. Lougheed at Queen's University, who runs the DNA lab, and they're, I'll say, thinking about it, but it's not a given at this point.
Anyone else? Yes, Councillor Land.
This is really surprising and a very good presentation. Thanks very much, Lawrence, and I would love to volunteer for that if you would agree. Question though, you didn't talk about the effect that it has on drinking water. And I know, and maybe Jake could speak to this, that along the river, and you're going to be doing the whole river, there are some very old houses that have been for years, maybe they're not anymore, I don't know, but they have been drawing their water from the river and using like UV systems and things like that. Has there been any research on what the impact of this kind of habitat aqua would have on drinking water, and can it be pulled out through the, let's say, a UV system, or is it even a threat? Is it so benign that you could drink it right out of the rip? Like, I don't know if there's any research on that at all.
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. There's been a lot of research. That's kind of the bottom line. Having said that, one of the items that I'm working on right now is called the Communications and Notification Plan, which is required by both Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Natural Resources. They have very, very strict notification guidelines. So for example, signage, landowner events or landowner meetings with agreement meetings, so they agree. But in terms of drinking water specifically, the interesting science behind Habitat Aqua, the active agent in it is called imazapyr, if you're a real science nut. I can send that information to you, but imazapyr, the way it's structured is that, as I had mentioned, that when it's applied to the plant, it has an adhesive property, so it sticks to the plant. It doesn't, like most herbicides, it doesn't roll off in a rainstorm or whatever. It's applied to the emergent plant, so it's not, most herbicides are applied subsurface. This is the only product that is, well, other than Roundup, of course, which we wouldn't recommend for obvious reasons. But it only gets sprayed on the emergent plant, and that's why they do it in September, why it's sprayed in September. But more importantly is that, as I'd mentioned, sunlight basically for all the overspray destroys the herbicide. However, in the notification plan, it is, I'll say, recommended that if someone is taking drinking water directly from the affected area when it's sprayed, basically they say don't draw water for drinking purposes within 48 hours. However, any other water, so whether it's water for sanitation systems or watering your trees or whatever, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the herbicide. So again, they recommend that if people are withdrawing drinking water directly from that 1.8 kilometer zone, then they wait for 48 hours. So this is all part of the notification plan that we would have with, say, the landowners or the property owners, mainly downstream, and I've got the zone for about 4 kilometers down. In fact, I noticed Teo is here this evening, so he'd probably be interested in hearing this. Yeah, there are a lot of precautions that go into the notification plan. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor McDonald, go ahead.
Just a question on the area. I see you've give us a map of a particular area. Is there other places like more Salmon River and places like that? They're just not documented yet?
So are you referring to the Napanee or?
Where the plant is.
Yeah, so through you, Your Worship, if you're referring to the Napanee River, that is the only area that is, I'll say, very obvious at this juncture. And that's why it's suggested that as part of our 2025 pre-implementation plan in 2026, is that we would do a survey, or as you said, kind of like a visual audit of the river in the July timeframe, because it is a very easy plant to identify. It's basically got this purple fireworks type bloom on it in the July timeframe, and they're really easy to see. So that would be one of our approaches. I should also mention out that I'm dealing with Town of Belleville, and the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte, because they have outbreaks in their area. So what I'm suggesting to them is that we will present to their councils through probably the board of Quinte Conservation, because that's 18 municipalities, but we're going to present to all of them so that they can kind of become aware of this threat to their waterways.
Anyone else? Where did this thing come from, Lawrence?
Interesting. I did a little bit of research on that. It has been documented as early as 1890 in Canada or North America. I'll say Asia basically is its home, or where it's come from. However, it has become such a threat to the environment in North America that, for example, in Ontario, it is illegal to have a flowering rushes are very pretty in a garden, like some other plants, but it is illegal in Ontario to have flowering rush in a garden or a public space or whatever. We can't figure out where it came from. This is the interesting thing, is given that 1.8 kilometer stretch, we cannot figure out how the heck it got into the river. So it's an elusive little critter.
Another mystery. Yes, Deputy Reeve Davison.
I would just like to say that Lawrence is asking for some type of commitment, and I think at this time, the only commitment we could make would be to include it in our budget deliberations for next year, and I'd make that a motion.
We have a motion on the floor. Councillor Milligan, you would second that. How do you, can we include that in the motion to receive, or how do you want to handle that?
Yeah, through you, Reeve-wise, so that the presentation be received and that funding be considered in 2025 budget deliberations.
And who's our mover and second?
Deputy Reeve Davison and Councillor Milliken.
That's all part of your motion then. Very good. With that amendment to the motion, all in favor? That's carried. Thanks, Lawrence. Very interesting. And our final deputation for the evening is Carolyn Butts, a request that the township assist with paying remaining invoices from this land event, funds to be reimbursed by Canadian Urban Institute grant. Just come on up. Carolyn, and Chantal is accompanying you this evening. Can I get a motion to receive Carolyn's report ahead of the final vote, please? Councillor, someone? Councillor McDonald, Deputy Reeve Davison, thank you. The floor is yours, Carolyn. Just
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Council, for hosting us tonight. It was early of this year when we came to you to ask for help with some event administration that we were hosted in September called This Land, a Material Experience. And you agreed to help out, and it has, the event happened successfully. We pulled it off. We got all the commitment that we had hoped for, and the day was a huge success. And however, the administration on the end of the My Main Street program, which is a FedDev funded program, has been arduous, to say the least, and we've been waiting for this moment in order to get the report finalized for us to receive payment. We have some outstanding invoices, and we just got word. We were hoping to be able to file the report. Brandy has been a very large help in getting this to fruition, and we just got notice from the Urban Institute, Canadian CanUrb, who is running the program for the federal government, and they just reminded us that this is a reimbursement grant, which means we have to pay for everything up front in order to be reimbursed. That was just, there was a line in the, I think it was a sentence inside the whole proposal that declared this. So that just came to us last week as a bit of a shock. The amount is $23,000 outstanding. I was hoping to pay all of the contributors from this event by Christmas, and this has put a stop on that. So we are here to ask, the money is there at CanUrb. We are asking for a loan to pay for $23,000 to pay all of the contributors. Many of them live in Stone Mills, Tamworth in particular, businesses and people who helped out. And so yeah, we need a loan. It should be a roughly 2-week turnaround period. Once the invoices are paid, proof of payment is submitted in the report to CanUrb from the municipality, from Brandy's office, and that needs to be approved, reviewed, and paid. So, you got anything to add to that?
I'm not sure. I know Brandy is well aware of the file, and she's been working really hard to communicate with the managing organization. We have already paid for a lot of the expenses. Caroline has. for this event, and, but to pay the people that have showed up and presented their work and made this a success, we can't really do it unless we get your help. I think that's what we,
Or I get a line of credit, essentially,
Yeah.
in order to get this done. So I'm hoping that the municipality, since they are considered the partner with My Main Street program, the municipality is the partner, and I'm sorry to come and ask you for this at this point. I did not see it coming until last week. So I would love to get this finalized, completed by the end of the year, and everyone paid by Christmas would be lovely, but I leave that to your decision, at your discretion.
Thank you, Carolyn and Chantal. Any questions or comments? Councillor Milligan.
So the thing that stands out the most is since the township didn't plan the event, how can we be assured that all the criteria was met to make sure we get the money?
Well, they already have, Brandy, you submitted the report to CanHerb already, and they have already, I'm presuming, reviewed it and have just come back to us and said, this is reimbursement, so you have to pay first for us to cover. That's, Brandy, have you got anything to add to this from CanHerb?
Through you, Reef-wise, so I believe once all final receipts are submitted, CanHerb then reviews everything to determine if all eligible costs are going to be reimbursed, is how it works.
We are within budget. So, you know, they have, and all of these payments, these invoices, are people who were at the event, presenting at the event. So if they decide not to pay us for something, then you don't pay. It doesn't get paid, because Brandy is paying for those invoices, right? So there are invoices. There is no reason that I can see that anybody would not be paid, because they fall. We've had to shift money around between certain, I don't know what you would call that. Categories, thank you. So, and we had that approval from the administration early on.
but the initial budget and the initial proposals for all of the activities and who we're going to give the money to and how we were going to spend it has been approved. And they granted us 29,230 or something like that. They've given us 25% upfront. We have given some deposits of some players in this event. And then Caroline has paid for all expenses of things and you know, but it's, now we have to reimburse the people that worked. And, but at the beginning, it's all been approved. All expenses and budget submitted has been approved. So now we just have to give them proof of payment, right? We have given them proof of payment for the first 25%, and now we need to give them proof of payment for the next 75, and they should reimburse the spending. That's how I understand it. And is that how you understand it, Brandy?
Through you, Reef-wise, so yes, they submitted a budget which was approved, and then they were granted, under the township was granted 29,320. So it is a reimbursement program, so CanHerb will go through all of the receipts and match them to the approved budget.
Did you have a follow-up, Councillor Milligan?
Well, I feel like this is, we've never, I mean, as long as I've been on council anyways, which I guess isn't very long, but it feels like I just don't know what kind of precedent we're setting if other groups come and expect the township to take the risk, I guess, of paying the bills when we're not guaranteed that the money, then all the taxpayers are on the hook for the money if it doesn't work out. that's what just isn't sitting quite right with me, unless I'm misunderstanding something.
Anyone else? Yes, Councillor McDonald.
I guess I'm confused at how it will look in our books, money like that going in and out. And I've never, ever come across that type of proposal where you pay up front before you get any. And does the money come into the township or does the money go to you? Like, there's a lot of questions for me anyways.
So the township, as the first 25% deposit came in from Canarb, Brandy issued checks. People picked up. So the money comes to you, but because this time it's the opposite, we have to pay for that money to be reimbursed. So they have committed to giving the municipality the last 75%. So we have already provided all the invoices that cover that. So essentially, I have to pay it, or the municipality can help this out. But the money's there, it's going to get reimbursed within 2 weeks. And it's, we all, Brandy and us read the proposal, that line was in there, reimbursement. I missed it. I guess Brandy missed it too. I don't know, but I don't know, I need your help.
Yes, go ahead.
So this is something
need your help.
we've come into an agreement at the very first with Township, so we've agreed to do this. So we almost got to finish it. I don't know. It's sounding like we had some kind of agreement with you. Is that correct?
It's the township that applied for the grant.
For you,
Yes.
under your
Yes.
name? Okay.
Jason, did you have a comment here?
I just want to correct, I don't believe that staff missed that this was a reimbursement program. This was quite clear in the documentation that was sent prior to the event. The contract for the agreement was sent to the organizers, and a supplemental agreement was sent to the organizers that further provided clarity to the organizers on how this program worked. The 25% upfront was in anticipation of other costs that would be incurred during the event and after the event that would be reimbursed. And so reimbursement by definition means that somebody organizing an event would have the ability to carry the costs for that event and then submit the documentation necessary in order to get the reimbursement completed as a total of the approved amount once all the proper documentation. There is quite a lengthy agreement that's in place that had requirements around advertising, around other performance metrics and reporting. But all this was provided prior to the event. The 25% was clear that it is an advance on the rest that would be reimbursed after the event paid its bills and submitted the complete package of paperwork to the Institute.
Thank you for that. Councillor Lalonde, did you have something? I thought, yeah, I saw your hand.
I was trying to formulate my question. It comes back to Sherry and also to Councillor McDonald. I guess the question is for Brandy and for staff. There was talk of this partnership. We were in partners with the Main Street program, and that we initially helped to fill out this application. We received the $25,000 into the township. No, it went, where did that 25%, sorry, where did the 25% go to when it was issued? Did it come into the township and then you wrote invoices? So the staff has already touched the financial component or part of the financial component of this event, is that right?
So through you, Reeve-Wise, so this is a federal government grant. So Carolyn and Chantel approached council last March or February, and council had directed staff to apply for funding on their behalf for their event. So that's how the township got involved with this. So the township applied. The township is the authority that received the grant because we are the organization. We submitted all our financials as directed by council. So you can receive up to 25% of funding up front, which we put in a request on behalf of Carolyn and Chantel, which was approved. So the 25% came in, and so that goes into the township because it's the township that's receiving the funding. So the money did come in, and the township paid about $7,000 to some of their contractors. So there's been about 5 people who have been paid thus far. So the remaining funds will again come into the township's banks, not Carolyn and Chantel's.
Right, okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, anything further? So at this point, I guess we need a decision since you're trying to get this done by the year end. We don't have any more council meetings until next year, essentially. So what's council's wishes? Yes, go ahead, Councillor Fenwick.
So this is for Brandy. Based on, you seem to have as much knowledge about this as anyone. If we do this, do you feel confident that this is going to come back to us without any headaches from what you see currently, or do you see any pitfalls that we haven't identified?
Through you, Reeve-Wise, I don't think I can answer that question. At this point, it's submitting proof of payment to contractors that were identified in an approved budget. It is a lengthy agreement with CANRB, which I don't know off the top of my head. So if there was some clause in there that said we, paid X amount of dollars and we were only supposed to spend this amount of dollars and it was denied, I really can't speak to that.
That actually does answer my question. If you weren't confident, if you were 100% confident, that'd be one thing. Anything less than that makes me a bit nervous, and no offense, it's just, we have to be cautious. This is ratepayer funds, not our money, right? Now, one thing you did mention, that there was a possibility you could get a line of credit. If it's such a short turnover, time-wise, is that not an option that you could do that? And then at that point, within a short period of time, you get reimbursed and then pay that off. It would be nominal, the carrying costs. Is that not a possibility?
Yeah, it is. But I did this job for the township. I did this work. I applied for this grant. I came to you for partnership. I have so far not been paid a dime for all the work that I put into it. It's not a guilt trip, but I'm just saying I was just hoping for, it's $23,000. I can't see why it would not be reimbursed. We have followed the guidelines. We are within budget. The money is there. They're just doing what they require. They are asking for their requirements to be upheld. They want this file off their desk as much as we want it over with as well. It has been very drawn out. And I have people in this township, in Tamworth, that has been waiting for this money, including myself. I'm out quite a bit of money at this point. And I was just looking for your support. I can go to the bank and I can go get a line of credit. I don't know how long that process will take. I'm not sure. And I waited for this. In fact, I was coming to approach the council months ago when we saw this delay. We needed to pay people who were not understanding how governments work. We're 90 days past now, and I thought the end in sight was here tonight, I'm very discouraged to do anything more, I have to say. You know, I worked very hard at working in this community, and I applied for this grant. We applied for this grant because so many events happen where people don't get paid, and there's volunteer work. I have done much volunteer work that is taken away from my business, and I thought, I'm going to apply for a grant so that people involved, people who bring their skills, time out of their day, we can reimburse. It's not a lot of money, but, you know, people who volunteer around here put in a lot of, hours and time, and it's nice sometimes to be remunerated for that time and effort. So I'm happy to, if I have to go get a line of credit, I will do that, and I will pay these people happily, if that's what you want me to do, if that's what you're going to expect me to do now.
Okay, any further comment? Yes, Councillor Lalande.
Just a quick question for Anita. If we were to do this, and I'm not supporting that or against, just a question, where would that money come from?
Through you, revise, it would have to be a request of council on where the money may want to come out of a reserve temporarily, or set up as a receivable, maybe run through recreation, but I don't know what kind of guarantee we would get. I agree, because we do funding, but I just got money from funding a couple of years ago. No.
Jason, did you have a supplementary there?
Just backing up, if we could just look at this from a policy point of view and a governance point of view, staff would be looking, in that scenario, more for direction on what our policy as a township should be in matters where we have a community group looking for temporary loans from the township as a matter of due course. This is not a typical request, and I'm not sure it's in our mandate to be issuing temporary loans to groups, but if that was something that council would like us to look at, that is a governance question that would address this. But if we're taking on, I would advise that we're taking on a little bit of risk in setting a precedent that we are going to create a scenario where interested parties could come to council and for a variety of reasons looking for short-term loans.
So that's the risk. Councillor Fenwick, did you have a comment?
Yeah, and I appreciate your response, and I do sympathize with you. I do a lot of community work and charity work. I've done it all my life, and I know sometimes this is just one of those things that just is an unfortunate circumstance that we find ourselves in. It is an unusual request for sure. Looking at it from the standpoint of being a representative for the ratepayers of Stone Mills Township, it's really difficult. To Jason's point, we did partner with you. We fulfilled our portion of the obligation. We sent off the information about what requirements were needed. It got missed. Didn't get missed on our end likely because we did send everything off, and here we are. So I really hate to do it, but I am not in support of it. I'm sorry.
Is there anyone that is in support of Carolyn and Chantel's request? Let's just be blunt. Wenda, did you want to make a motion?
Speak to it first. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I'm coming back to a comment that Brandy made, and that was she talked about a lengthy contract, and she wasn't prepared to speak to that because she, obviously, lengthy contracts, lots going on. I know the timing really sucks, pardon the language. But I'm wondering if there's an opportunity here for some thought about the contract, about the nitty-gritty of it. And we have partnered. That's what we did when the council agreed to it. The staff worked with, Carolyn and Chantel. So we have partnered. We have received 25% of those funds. So we've had our fingers on this project. And I think it's kind of, I want to say, unfair that now that this $23,000 has to be paid first, that we just say, oh, well, sorry, we're done with the partnership. We did what we were supposed to do, but we didn't fine tune that. We didn't write that out in our agreement that we do this and then we're done. And I think it's unfortunate that one individual in this township, or two, is going to be faced with financial stress in going and getting a line of credit, hopefully that she'd be successful, when, I hate to put it, but we've got $12.5 million in cash in a bank. So maybe going forward, we need to nail down a policy and a procedure and say, this one we will support, but going forward, we now have a policy that addresses this, and we will make sure, and, this is how it's going to go going forward. But I think there's an opportunity here, especially this time of year, to be a little philanthropic and help somebody out, and hope that Carolyn comes back and has another wonderful event with the understanding that there will be some limitations on that funding.
So the mover was Councillor McDonald and seconded by Deputy Reed Davison, is that correct? Are you willing to append a motion to favor Carolyn and Chantel's request to your motion to receive? Okay, so how do you want to handle this then? Just do the motion to receive at this point? So all in favor of that motion? To receive. That's carried. Did you want to then make your motion?
I would make the motion that we support Carolyn going forward and handle the money as it comes in from CAN-ERP.
And is there a seconder for that motion? Well, I'll step out of the chair.
Reeve-wise, can I just get clarification on what the motion is?
Motion would be that we pay CAN-ERP the $23,000 as a township.
No, we don't pay them. We pay the people who have invoiced the program.
Oh, okay, so, okay, yeah, and pay the people that have invoiced the program, and that we receive the funds back.
Okay, is there a seconder for that motion? Okay, I'm going to second that motion. So Doug, can you take the chair? Because I don't think I can do that while I'm in the chair. Okay, I will second that motion. And you can call a question. Okay, sorry, Carolyn, your request is denied. I guess your only option is the bank at this point. So, sorry. Okay, I'm sorry it ran into difficulty for you. Okay, my computer has gone to sleep. Okay, items for consideration. We moved 8.5 up to the first position here. And that is our emergency plan bylaw update. The recommendation is that we receive the report and that council adopt the updated emergency response plan, and that bylaw to be numbered, being a bylaw to adopt an emergency management program and emergency response plan, be enacted and passed, and the Reeve and clerk be authorized to sign and seal. Can I get that motion on the floor, please? Councillor Milligan and Councillor McDonald. James, you're addressing this.
Through you, Reeve-wise, yes, we're just, this is more of a procedural update to our bylaw and our plan with staff changes that have occurred over the past year and a half or so.
So no major wholesale changes to our plan, just sort of more housekeeping and updating. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for James? None? All in favor? That's carried. Thanks, James. And that brings us to what previously was item 8.1, which is the Newburgh-Camden's Lions Club request for support. This is an annual request that we get to support a couple of little initiatives that they endeavor in our township. And that is that the Camden-Newburgh, or the Newburgh-Camden Lions Club appreciate your continued support for the annual breakfasts, breakfast with the Easter Bunny and breakfast with Santa in our budget deliberations this year. So we don't need a motion on that, do we, other than to receive, Brandy?
Again, just that it be brought forward in 2025.
In the budget discussion. Can someone move that, please? Councillor Woodcock and Councillor Lalande, all in favor? Yeah, sorry, Doug, go ahead.
Question, is that for 2025 budget or for this year's budget? 25, thank you.
Yeah, we already covered them for this year, so Easter Bunny was compensated. Did we do the all in favor? All in favor, just make sure. Okay, good, thank you. The next item is from Mothers Against Drunk or Drug Driving, I guess, Canada. Request for support. Council has supported this in the past. The recommendation is that the request be received and that council direct staff to purchase a business card size ad from the printing and advertising budget line. Is there a mover for this? Councillor Fenwick, Councillor McDonald, any discussion? All in favor? That's carried, thank you. Item 8.3, I guess it's 8.4 now. It's from Good Roads, a request for support regarding the establishment of an Ontario Rural Safety Program. It's a very lengthy motion. I'm not going to read it all out. I assume council has read it. It's basically to support this initiative to create a rural road safety program. Can I get a mover and a seconder for this, please? Deputy Reeve Davison and Councillor Milligan. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And finally, a request from the, no, I guess it's not finally, there's a further one further on, from the LNA County Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee. A motion to receive this correspondence, which is that LNA County Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee requests that the county's lower tier municipalities investigate any available accessible transportation options, including potential opportunities for partnerships. I'm assuming this is transportation in regard to disabled residents. Is there a mover and a seconder for this, please? Councillor McDonald and Councillor Lalande, any discussion? It's a very general one. Doug, go ahead.
Yeah, I discussed this with Robert Clancy, who's a member of that committee, and they didn't have any specific plans. They just wanted us to be aware that there is no transportation for handicapped people in the township. The closest, if any, transportation is Napanee Taxi. So I just wanted to be aware in case something would cross their desk, so we would come that we could be able to maybe take action on. Okay.
Thank you for that, Doug. Any further discussion? All in favor? That's carried. The next one is a review of bylaw enforcement. There is a lengthy report on our bylaw enforcement here. Can I get a mover and seconder to put this one on the floor, please? Councillor Fenwick and Councillor Milligan. Clerk Teeple, did you want to address this report?
Through you, Reeve-Wise, this is just a follow-up report as directed by council back in September, I believe. So if there's any questions, happy to answer.
This is quite a lengthy and detailed report. Does anyone have any comment? Councillor Fenwick.
Brandy, thank you so much. This is fantastic. I was impressed. I went through it, and this answers all the questions that I've always had about our bylaw setup, and it was just so detailed, just well done. I'm sure that everybody feels the same that went through this. One of the things I find very interesting here is the calls logged, and obviously we're seeing a dramatic uptick 2021 was 101, and then now for 2024, 263 just to date. Now I'm assuming this would be the date of the report. So 248 in 2023. So obviously, COVID must have driven a dramatic increase in these, and I'm assuming that has to do with all kinds of people looking at each other and maybe picking at each other, I'm sure. But one of the things I noticed is that we aren't necessarily, the money we're spending on bylaw enforcement doesn't seem to follow that same pattern directly. It's not as dramatic. Is there anything that that would cause such a differentiation? Like, I would expect to see a 200 or 300% increase in the cost, but I'm not seeing that.
Through you, Reeve Wise, I'm not sure why you're not seeing that correlation in there. It could very well be bylaw enforcement is just being more efficient with their time, and when staff get a call, they call Frontenac Municipal bylaw enforcement, and they go and do their inspections. So they could just be doing, even though they're doing more inspections, they're able to do them more efficiently and doing them multiple inspections per day rather than spreading it out throughout the week and having higher mileage costs could be a reason.
Thank you, Brandy. That makes sense. I'm looking at 2021, for example. 2021, 101 calls logged. Total expenditure, $26,844. Then you go to 2023, 248 calls logged, an increase of 240% roughly. And yet the total is only $34,900 and change. So we've only seen not even a full $10,000 lift, even though 2.6 times as many calls. So that's where I wasn't sure, but that does make sense. If mileage makes up a significant portion of the cost of this, and they're in the township maybe bundling calls, then maybe it's not on a per call basis so much. That's really great. I was trying to understand why the cost. I'm not worried about cost staying in line. I kind of like that on behalf of our ratepayers. But that's really helpful. Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions or comment on the report? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, item 8 point, I guess it'll be 8.8 now. It's 8.7 on the agenda. The waste transfer site in Yarker, legal non-conforming use. The recommended motion is that council receive a report and the council maintains motion 08-248-2008 regarding the legal non-conforming use at 2697 County Road 6, and that no further action be taken on this matter. Can I get a motion to that effect? Councillor Land, Councillor McDonald, any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And finally, item 8.8, as printed on the agenda, zoning bylaw amendment application D04-2024. Recommended motion is that the planning report regarding zoning bylaw amendment application D04-2024 be received and that council approve the application to rezone the subject property, and that a bylaw to be numbered later, being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 2014-744, our zoning bylaw, zone change from RU, which is just our generic rural zone, to a site-specific hamlet residential HR-6 zone be enacted and passed, and the Reeve and clerk be authorized to sign and seal. Manager of Development Services, Sands, did you want to speak to this report?
Thank you, Reeve Wise. I can speak to anything that any member of council may have from a question perspective. I'm not going to go through it in detail. I think the report is fairly comprehensive. That being said, I do want to point out one minor change, an administrative change to what is incorporated within the draft bylaw on tonight's agenda. I'll proceed to the section of the bylaw, section 1.2 sub A 1 sub A, permitted uses as considered through this bylaw are multiple unit dwelling. An administrative amendment has been made to detail that to include 5 single detached dwellings, just to ensure that there's future interpretation that's consistent in council's eyes as well as members of the community, because the intent, as you know, through the detail of this report, is to construct 5 individual separate dwelling units per landholding, as opposed to a single building that would include 5 or more units within that single building. So our bylaw doesn't define such a use. That's the reason for this over-explanation, if you will, under permitted uses. That's the only minor change I'd like to bring to your attention, Reeve-wise. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Any questions or comments on this application? I think we've already been quite familiar with it. Yes, go ahead, Councillor Lalande.
Does the land that we're talking about here tonight, is it in the hamlet boundaries? Maybe I missed that. I wasn't able.
Through you, Reeve-wise, that's correct, Councillor Lalonde. The entirety of the parcel is within the hamlet of Newburgh and within the rural settlement area as defined by the county.
Anything further? We'll call a question then. All in favor? Yes, sorry. Oh, did we not get a mover and seconder? My apologies. Councillor Fenwick and seconded by Councillor Milligan. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to the consent agenda. Is there any item anyone wishes to pull out of the consent agenda? Yes, Councillor McDonald, go ahead.
I was looking at 9.8, and it seems the Aurora Town Council, they sent a letter to the Prime Minister Trudeau and Premier Ford regarding keeping the land transfer tax and GST. Is that something we could submit a letter as well? I found that interesting.
We can submit any sort of letter we please. These resolutions are circulated, and Clerk Teeple has decided to include them in our agenda package. So if there's something in there we support, we can receive and support the resolution, which means that our name is added to that as it's circulated among other municipalities and so on. If you wish, we could append this resolution to a letter expressing the same concern or request. That would be up to council, and if you want to make a motion to that effect, or you just want more information.
Yes, I would love to make a motion that we follow along with a letter regarding supporting and keeping the land transfer tax and GST. Is that all you need?
Okay, we do, okay. Yeah, so you want a motion to pull it out first?
No, just a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Oh, and then pull stuff out?
No.
Oh, get that on the floor?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. All right, I'll stop putting words in your mouth and shut up. Okay. Okay, so I need a motion first to adopt the consent agenda. Councillor Milligan and Deputy Reeve Davison, and then I'm going to ask that this one be pulled out by Councillor McDonald. So since there's a motion on the floor, how does Councillor McDonald get her concerns addressed?
So call the question on consent, and then she can vote on that item separately.
Okay, all right. Do I want to see if there's anything else anyone wants to pull out? Yes. Is there any other item anyone wants to pull out of the consent agenda? Well, I do. I think there's one in there about the reimbursement of policing costs. If I recollect, somewhere in here. Would that be a letter from the Attorney General? Yes. Yeah, I'd like to pull that one out, just so that we get the dollar amounts clear on that one. Anything anyone else wants to discuss? Nothing, so you want a vote on the consent agenda at this point. So all in favor of the consent agenda items? Now, Councillor McDonald, you can make your motion on whichever one it was.
So just motion to receive the support.
Receive and support that,
Yeah.
that resolution from, sorry, which one was it again, Wendy?
9.8, I believe. Yes, 9.8.
Right, it's from the town of Aurora.
Yes.
Okay, Is there a seconder for that? Yes, Councillor Woodcock. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. And somewhere in here, yes, it's 9.7. No, that's not the one I wanted. Municipal Affairs and Housing.
9.7 is OPP billing.
Yeah, that's a resolution, but is there not? Yeah, the one from the Solicitor General. There it is. It's 9.12. And in response to a chorus of concerns, no, that's the detachment board. So maybe 9.3. I'll get there. Yeah, it's on 2 pages. Yeah, so finally, after receiving a bill for policing for the coming year of something like a $300,000 plus, closer to 400, I think it was, increase, and many municipalities have received similar grotesque budget increases, the ministry the Solicitor General's ministry has decided to send out, I don't know, 70 or 80 million bucks to 77 million to affected municipalities. And the proposed billing changes will provide an estimate $191,000 in financial relief for Stone Mills, bringing the new total for OPP services being billed to 1.136 million. I believe it was 1.07 million last year's. I don't want to put you on the spot, Anita. Can you, off the top of your head, tell us how much of an increase this new billing level represents compared to last year?
Through you, Reeve-Wise. So the increase, the adjusted increase compared to the billing from 2023 to 2024 to 2025 will be 48,000, just over 48,000, or probably one tax rate increase, 1%, one tax increase.
So
For that, opposed to the proposed almost 4%, over 4% increase,
it's-
just because of the tax levy. So it's an increase of, 48,000 from last year to this year with the adjustment.
Thank you. That's certainly a lot more bearable. It's like we were getting hit with a hammer and now we're getting patted on the head or something. Yeah, smaller hammer, a rubber hammer. So that's a relief. I wasn't looking for a motion on that. I just wanted people to be aware that we're getting that amount of relief from something we shouldn't have been saddled with in the first place. But I guess that's a political comment, and I withdraw that statement. Okay, we've gotten through the consent agenda, and we've reached 11. That's any notice of motion a councillor wishes to make at this time. None declared. Any direct motion? None declared. Any announcements that council might have? No one has anything? We don't have a closed meeting this evening. So before I ask for the confirmation bylaw, I'll just wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, or a Happy Holiday if you celebrate in some other way. And we'll wrap this one. Can I have a motion for confirming bylaw? Councillor Milligan, Councillor Land, all in favor? That's carried. Motion to adjourn. Deputy Reeve Davison, Councillor Woodcock, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you.